So thank you all. It's great to see all these faces who are interested in what we have to say. So my name is Elvis Frazier, and I'm the founder of Sankofa Consulting. I'll share a little bit more about myself in a second. I have with me two of my colleagues, and they're both, one of them have my name, but she's not me. So we'll have them just say who they are very quickly.
Hi, I'm Megan. I'm not Elvis. We're trying to change my name right now, so I go by Meg as well.
It's good to see you all. My name is Megan Mcneely, and I'm part of the Senkofa team.
And that's the reason why we have Meg and Megan, because I get confused and they get emails from one when I'm in the other, and so it confuses me too. So hopefully we get the names clear here. So welcome everyone. Thank you for your attention and your interest. So as I said earlier, I am the founder and managing director of Sankofa Consulting, a international development, community development consulting practice growing. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second, but just a little bit about myself. I founded Senkofa after completing 10 years at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where I was at senior leadership role in measurement, learning, and evaluation for our portfolios across South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, focusing initially on a range of areas, including financial services, agriculture, water, sanitation, and hygiene, and governance, and some exploratory areas. Massive portfolios, as you know, given the foundation's work and being the largest philanthropic entity globally. And in that role that I had, my focus was on helping the co-chairs and leadership to learn about the results of their various investments. So on the front end was helping with strategy development, how to craft strategies that have clear goals and objectives, good targets, how to position them for good measurement, specifying theories of change, results frameworks, you name it, setting up measurement systems to capture information on the key results of these investments, how to help to draw insights from those to inform decision-making and practice improvement, and tell good stories about the difference that the foundation investments made. I, after 10 years, decided to take all of those experiences and start Sankofa Consulting. And it's now, we're in our fourth year of existence as a practice, as a company. We are a LLC and an S Corp structure. We currently are expanding. We don't yet have most of the people, the team work on 1099 arrangement as we're building out our back office support and determining how we want to grow and develop, basically packages for employees. But now we're still on the arrangement with most of our team being in a 1099 arrangement, which means that we don't currently offer a benefits package. We offer our team are employed as on hourly wage rates with end of year bonus plan, and that structure is sort of what we're using going forward as we grow. So in the future, we expect that will change, but for right now, given our 4th year, we're still in that building mode. We're growing quite rapidly in terms of number of clients and such, and I'll tell you a little bit about some of those clients. Just a little bit more on why I decided to form Sankofa. At this point in my career, after about 25, almost 30 years in business, I started out in academia. I, like you, was immersed in an academic environment. I have my doctorate in socioeconomics from Ohio State. I taught. I was a young professor at the American University in Cairo. I spent some time in academia, then in applied international development, and then philanthropy, and now a small business owner and technical lead. I started Senkofa with a mission to marry my passion for social justice and my technical experience, and basically have fun changing the world and doing things that will help to be part of the solution and part of the problem. That's the ethos of Sankofa, is that. And with the increasing focus on equity and inclusion issues over the last year, this has sort of given more wind to our sails, because we've found that quite a bit of our work now has a very strong social justice equity focus, be that work internationally or domestically. For instance, we're working with the city of Fresno to help them craft a 10-year, $4.5 billion investment to place race equity at the center of economic transformation, to ensure those who have historically been excluded are now part of the included in the growth from those $4.5 billion investments. So it's, the focus is on economic growth and shared prosperity. We're doing a similar work for the Monterey County, focused primarily starting point with the city of Salinas on a similar issue. We are helping the Hilton Foundation to integrate equity, DEI, into its strategy for $175 million reinvestment of its work. The Gates Foundation continues to be our primary partner. We are helping them on basically being their learning partner for their humanitarian portfolio, looking at learnings from investments that are testing innovative solutions for refugee and situations of protracted crises. These are innovations that can catalyze greater change for that population, such as financial transfer solutions to get financial resources to people without using cash. And so we're looking at those lessons. We're looking at solutions, interventions in the water, sanitation, hygiene areas, such as turning human waste into fuel, and different kinds of solutions to develop biodegradable toilets. So we're assessing those. Our job is not to develop those solutions, but to synthesize the lessons learned from the adaptations of solutions like that. So I spent a great part of the pre-COVID period traveling to different parts, Jordan, Bangladesh, Kenya, you name it, looking at those solutions, documenting the lessons from that, writing case studies and reports for the foundation to disseminate to the field and to use internally to inform its ongoing calibration of its strategies. We are in the process of working with the city of Seattle to facilitate an equitable, what they call equitable solutions. That's not quite the name. I'm looking for the name here, but it will come to me in a second. It's really about helping the mayor honor a commitment to invest $100 million for in response to the demand that came out of the post-George Floyd demonstration to do better for BIPOC populations. So my team is part of a bigger team facilitating the design and identification of problems, designing solutions that respond to BIPOC populations. So that's just a very broad sort of sweep of the work that we're doing. Last one that I forgot to mention is helping the Bellevue School District to honor its commitment to basic students who have experienced trauma and looking at interventions, helping to, one, set up programs and design the tracking and monitoring for that. So few things there. I'll pause in a second to have my colleagues share, but I'll just realize I neglected to tell you or to share with you the origin of the name Sankofa. Does any of you know what Senkofa is on the call? Anyone who are familiar with Sankofa? Okay, Sankofa literally means, it's a word from the Akan people in Ghana, and that the Akan people have a long history of using words and symbols to really transfer meaning and philosophy that guides their life. And Sankofa is basically is a symbol of a bird. I'll actually show you a picture of it here in a second. Let me just put it on the screen because I do have that. Do I have the ability to share my screen, Shannon?
Good, yes, it should be down at the bottom in your toolbar.
Okay, let me find that here in a second and share with you. And before we, okay, yes, we do. So let me share my screen here and screen 2. And we'll put this on presentation mode here. Can you see my screen?
We're not seeing your screen right now.
Okay, all right, let me reinitiate that and start over. And let's do that again. Sorry. Sometimes it does that. All right. Are you seeing my screen now?
Yes, we are.
Okay. All right, let's do this. Can you see what is the meaning of Senkofa on your screen?
Yep, we're seeing it.
Okay. So, you know, this is an old logo of Sankofa, so it's not the current one you see on the website, but it's evolved. So Sankofa, as I said, it's literal translation and symbol is meaning that it's not taboo to go back and fetch what was left behind. So this bird is reaching back, finding wisdom, picking up the wisdom from the past to go forward. So Sankofa, return, go and get it, and take what was there being wisdom to inform the future. And that's strategic for consulting practice, because at the end of the day, the core of our business is helping to use data and information to identify solutions or insights. So data-informed insight in order to inform practice and solutions for moving forward. So I wanted just to then pause here and give my colleagues a minute or two to say a little bit about what it's like for them to work for Senkofa, for what they do. So whoever, either of you can, whoever wants to start, just to share a little bit about what you do. And
Sure, I can go. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Megan Mcneely. I am an evaluation officer and program manager at Senkofa. I've been with the organization for almost 2 years, and I met Elvis through the Gates Foundation. I was there on the agriculture team, and then I switched over to the financial services for the poor team. So I do a pretty wide range of things. I was thinking about my typical week, and I think it tends to be split into 3 different ways. 3 different areas of work. The first one is project management. So a big part of that is keeping projects moving, keeping track of deadlines, interacting with clients, making sure those relationships are solid and managing those, doing a lot of back and forth, sending emails, setting things up, and then contributing in meetings, doing a lot of synthesis, write up, follow up, that type of a thing. The second area is really in writing and thinking. So that's a lot more content-based. We do a lot of technical assistance for organizations in the ways that Elvis just outlined. So that's working on frameworks, memos, reports. It's pretty writing heavy. I also help out with understanding sections for proposals, just kind of writing whatever we're thinking, sending it off, and then Elvis will usually take a cut after that and we'll go back and forth. And then the last third of my time, this is on average, some weeks are really writing heavy, some weeks are really meeting heavy, whatever it is. The last third of the time I think is in calls and meetings. And so with that, I can help with data collection. So doing key informant interviews, either taking notes or leading some of them or asking questions, jumping in, facilitating calls. And then that's really when we're on the phone with clients in meetings, doing planning, technical assistance, whatever it may be. So in that way, there's a lot of managing relationships, synthesizing information, writing. It's been really useful to keep very organized, keeping track of what's going on, making sure you've got an eye on things and where the pieces are, how they need to move forward, thinking ahead as much as possible in terms of what needs to happen next. And one thing that I've really liked about it is that it offers the opportunity to learn about all kinds of different projects all around the world. So in the same day, we're working on race equity in Fresno. We're also looking at toilet innovations in Senegal, and then working on financial services somewhere else. So it's really exciting to be able to learn about the work being done all over the world and all the different kinds of projects happening. So yeah, that's my short little spiel.
Thanks, Megan. And again, my name is Megan Oudman. I go by Meg for purposes of keeping Megan and myself separate. Easier said than done sometimes, but that's okay. Our work overlaps here and there. So I don't necessarily have a typical week because my work is very much so involved with business development. So I am a program manager of the business development and operations. I also do a little bit of key informant interviews with the technical, so I'll tag team on that with Elvis, whether it's domestic or international projects. But a lot of my work is focused on the business development side. So that's working on the proposals, coordinating with other consultants that we are going to use for some of the work that hopefully we'll win. And not only in the writing, but it's also in the design. So that's one of the art pieces that I like to be involved in is, making sure that literally all of the tables look alike. I mean, it's the nitty gritty, but I love that. I enjoy that very much. So I do a lot of the PowerPoints as well, working with, I'd say primarily working with more on the content side. It's the content has already been there, and then Megan and Elvis will usually pass it to me for structuring some of the work to be passed on to the clients. And then I also do the website. So that's been a fun and learning curve for me because I really just enjoy trying to learn new things. As Megan said too, we were a small team. So when I joined in December of 2018 and was out for about a year hiatus with cancer treatment and came back. And it really was just Elvis, Megan, and myself until we just grew a little bit more last fall when we added 2 new people. So it was definitely a wide range of activity in any given week where, to Megan's point, we'd work with the Bill and Melinda Gates team on some of their emergency response initiatives. And then right now I'm also managing one of the programs that Elvis already mentioned earlier that's in Salinas County. So the domestic and international is a large part of our work. And if you have any questions, we're happy to answer anything.
Great. Thank you, team. And we'll sort of pause here. There are now six of us on. You can see on the website. Can't recall. Plus consultants we use on time-bound things. So we are a team that has flexibility to grow depending on our need, but we have a small and growing core team. So pause here and let questions come, and we can take them as needed.
So I think for questions, people could feel free to type them into the chat box, or if you wanted to raise your hand so you could unmute yourself and ask the question, that would work as well. To kick us off, I wonder, Elvis, if you can share a little bit. You recently shared a job announcement with the Evans School for a program officer position. So I wonder if you could just start by sharing a little bit about that and what a student or a recent graduate might be able to do for you.
So here's where we can get into a little bit more about what we're thinking and about the position. So we crafted the position with utmost sort of openness and flexibility, because we, as you heard, we are a growing entity and we don't have yet the ability for hyper specialization in our work. So the ideal sort of person that fits in our team is someone that is very excited about learning, that is curious and doesn't mind sort of trying their hand at different things, both content-wise and also international, domestic, with a through line, in two areas. One is these are projects that are highly mission-driven, with a strong connection to equity and social justice issues globally. And then it's really about evidence and learning, how to use data-informed insights to for clients to make decisions, either in crafting strategies, recalibrating programs, or just doing better at reflective practice using insights as they go along to shape their work. So we're looking for, we shape that job description not as in a fixed way, but to give an insight into the kinds of things and skill sets and responsibilities that will likely be part of people we bring in. So in a sense, then we have flexibility. The reason that why now? The timing is important for us because we have experienced growth over the last year in the number of clients, primarily foundations, as I mentioned, who are our clients, and nonprofit organizations. So we currently have work with the primary client being the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We are looking at expanding the work with them. We're in process of negotiating that partnership, a growing partnership. So that's a key client for us. We are, as I said, in Congress, we are working for the Hilton Foundation. We have a strong and growing partnership with the Central Valley Community Foundation in Fresno, which has grown over the last year. And we're working also with a few non-profit organizations and with city government in the case of City of Seattle. So what we want is people who have interest broadly in those areas of social justice, but also in evidence and learning, monitoring and evaluation, knowledge management. Those are the practice areas. So at this point, we are open to different kinds of configurations, and with emphasis on willingness to grow and learn and try your hand at things. We have a culture here where there's no shame in trying things and no shame in failing and growing and learning. We put a strong emphasis on building a team spirit. My team can share that. We spend a lot of time working out how to really build a high performing team, that respects everyone's whole self showing up. So those are just some things. So that's just what I would say about that. So not, in a sense, not a very fixed position. That is probably the best rendition of the key skills responsibilities that we want to identify for our growth.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
You can ask me questions about my work. You can ask me about my hobbies, whatever. You have the opportunity. Go for it. Or just about graduate school in period.
I have a question. Hi.
Sure.
I'm Veda Patwardhan. I'm a PhD student here at the Evans School. I'm just wondering, which sectors are you personally excited to work in and to grow Sankofa's work? Like, are there particular areas which relate to your own expertise or sectors that you are excited to grow the company in?
Great, good question. So I fortunately have had an experience across multiple sectors because the work I do at times tends to be sector agnostic in that good learning and systems transcends, a content. But to your question, the areas that I am deepest in would include agriculture development, financial services, the humanitarian sectors, and those are foundational areas for Sankofa. We have done some things that in the water, sanitation, and hygiene, and probably have a fair amount of capabilities in those areas. And in health broadly, we have done some things, but agriculture, financial services, humanitarian sector are areas that show up a lot in the work we do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a question. So among the clients that you've mentioned, I can imagine there's a pretty big variety in their experience with M&E, their sophistication with M&E. So I'm just kind of curious if you can talk us through a little bit of how you approach that, or how maybe you adapt the work with these various clients.
Great question. And we find that quite often capacity varies tremendously across the different clients we work with. And one of our primary focus is right sizing what we do for clients' needs and capacity. I have a strong interest in capacity strengthening in the areas of M&E, and did a lot of that kind of work in my portfolio at the Gates Foundation. It was about institutional strengthening and capacity development across the African continent in the areas of research and M&E. What we do is work with clients where they are at. So depending on their, we recognize that, when we start a relationship with a client, we may need to do some diagnostics to understand familiarity with key terminologies and concepts. What's the theory of change? What's the results framework? How those kinds of things need to be. How much formative work we need to do to bring clients along in terms of having a common framework, common basis. In fact, we often, with Megan and I, the work in Fresno, we do a lot of early basic formative work with working with 19 different initiatives cut across multiple different sectors. And these are CBOs. We constantly run trainings, just the background basics on M&E to get them up to a point where we can have a conversation where we are talking from understanding each other and have some shared concepts and terminologies and such.
Elvis, there was a question that came through in the chat from Mia, who is curious if you can share a little bit about the onboarding process that you would envision for new members joining the team.
Yeah, I think what we have done in the past, last year, for instance, we had an intern that worked with us. She's currently at London School of Economics, and so she worked with us last year. And the onboarding was simply supporting one of our other team members and me on some different, projects. I believe in basically onboarding through cutting your teeth at something under my or other team members' supervision and guidance. As we said here, we try not to push people off in the deep end and let them, in that sense, but we also want it to be as grounded as possible. So are there this sort of discrete components of a project that they can do or support some other activity that one of us is working on? So that's kind of what it would be like, is for someone who we want to work with, is trying to figure out what is that, that way to get started. It's different for someone who's experienced, have a track record of working, and a project comes up where there's a role and we kind of basically slot that person in, still on the supervision. But that's a little different from, say, someone who may be still, in graduate school and may want to start getting exposed to work from an internship type arrangement and come in that way. So it depends on, if this is someone who's graduated and have something, a skill set that fits a need that has come up on an expanded project or a new project, different from, say, a partnership with someone who may want to work at some hours and grow in that relationship. Right now, as a growing organization, we're open to different kinds of arrangements that may fit, one, where we are currently with our portfolio of work and where the person is in that sense. We're looking to grow. We have a strong interest in diversity in our team. So we're looking at language, people of language skills, because we work globally. Ethnic and racial diversity is also important to us, obviously. So I think all of those things are things that we will consider, and we'll take each person as they come and see what, who have interest in and skills that fit the things that we're looking for.
Hi. So I thought Anne's question was really interesting. I'm a first-year Evans student, and so I'm just kind of getting my first exposure to the world of working internationally in a public sphere. And I'd love to hear an example, either from Elvis or one of the Megans, on sort of an example of a situation where something that you did domestically would not have worked internationally, or vice versa, where those kind of differences lie. I think that would be really interesting to hear.
Megan, Meg, any of you want to take a crack at that?
I can take a first crack. In some of our work with the Hilton Foundation, they have both domestic and international portfolios. And so their work is with diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's kind of the lens that we're working through for this project with them. And one of the first things we talked about was how that differs domestic and internationally. And the biggest difference really is that domestically, it tends to be race. That's the big first thing that we want to focus on. And internationally, it's gender for the most part. So those are both components. We want to look at all diversity, equity, and inclusion components for, you know, anything that could be diverse about a person in when we look at projects, but primarily gender tends to be the big one where women are left behind globally, and race in America is huge, as we all know. So that definitely shifts the way that they do their projects and the way that they look at their monitoring and evaluation.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Megan. That's a good example, actually, where the way you would structure the barriers to equity and understanding the cultural nuances, gender, and perhaps economic status, on even, you know, ethnicity and language are some of the other dimensions that may show up a little bit differently in the international context. But the through line there still is, there are dimensionalities to that. The individual, the organization, and systemic barriers, we would approach it with that framework, regardless of how the genre of expression of diversity in a specific context. Others curious? I think Megan should tell you about her trip to Zimbabwe and how that was, because that was her first international trip. It was her first trip to Africa and her first international work for Sankofa. And you know, I think she was a little scared at first, but you know, to take on that role. But maybe share something from that.
Sure, I can talk about it. Yeah, that was after I'd been with Senkofa, I think, for a few months. And so I was still fairly new to the work and still learning the ropes a little bit. And I went to Zimbabwe to do some interviews for some financial services work. And so I was definitely a little bit nervous. It was my first, I'd been to Morocco, but that's very different than sub-Saharan Africa. And I hadn't really done a lot of work travel yet. I've done a lot of travel for fun, but it was definitely my first time figuring out the ropes in terms of working and traveling. It was very exciting. It was an incredible experience, and our meetings, our days were full. And fortunately, we had a partner based in Nairobi that that met me there in Zimbabwe, and we were able to work together on it. And so she really took the lead and showed me around, showed me some. It was really helpful to have her there, because then we could really connect in a different way with the driver and the different people that we interacted with. So I think it opened up my cultural experience quite a bit, because they had a way to bond because they're both African. And then I got to be there as an American, kind of welcomed in a little bit more. And that was really exciting. It was an incredible experience, and I'm excited for things to open up a bit more so that we can travel to more places. And they definitely have their own way of working and living that's different than it is here. And it was very cool to be, I think we got something different out of the interviews because we were there in person and we had a better understanding of the context, specifically in Zimbabwe. That was really useful, and I got a lot out of it.
Thank you. Thank you. COVID-19 changed the dynamics of our work, of course, for everyone, because a lot of our work we had this last year, a big sort of plan to keep the pace of travel, which is another thing that was very dominant in our work. We weren't using Zoom as much as we do now. But that's kind of threw the plans off for some of the travel parts. Travel right now is restricted until we all get to another place in this pandemic, but it will continue to be part of the work, be it domestic or internationally. So it's just, but more than that, it's the cultural contextualization of our work that really is important, regardless of it's domestic or international, whether we use Zoom or face-to-face. It's something that comes up. So familiarity or willingness to sort of wade into those areas and comfort level working with people who are very different from the way we work is something that we value, and something that I coach and train around in terms of how to manage situations. It's just from my career has been primarily on the international scene. And you may be able to tell from my accent, I was born and grew up outside this country. I'm from the Caribbean, from small little country, Jamaica, and work and lived overseas for years, worked pretty much. I'm up to about 35 countries in which I've worked over and counting. So that's informs the ethos of Sankofa in a lot of ways.
I think I saw a moment ago that someone had raised their hand. It's not still raised, so I don't know if that's still a question. So
there's a question there. I just saw it.
Raise their hand again. So if you want to go ahead and ask a question.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't want it to just sit up there as Megan was telling her amazing story. Something that's really important to me when I guess is just seeing the relationships that the organization has with the partners that they work with. So I'd love to hear what about your team culture, or just in Senkofa in general? Like, what do you do to curate the relationships you have with your partners during a project, especially virtually? That's just something I really value.
I'll let my team speak to that from two angles: how we work as a team and how we cultivate teams here, but also how that cascades or translates into how we work with our partners as well. So perhaps, team, if you want to share anything on that.
Sure, I can start and Megan can add if she'd like. Yeah, for internally for our team at Senkofa, we, like I said, it's very small. We meet now bi-weekly, and Elvis has started a really great way of just grounding us. That's been something that's been part of our team meetings for a while now. I don't even remember when they started actually, but it's a moment for us to really just take turns actually and use that time to reflect either on something that's happened in their personal lives or with the work. It could be any simple question of, what related to food. Elvis loves food. So a lot of times, we'll talk about, what's something that we might not necessarily have in common, but it's all something, what is a meaningful dish that you had in childhood. So we'll really start off these meetings just kind of talking about the same thing before getting into the content, especially as the team is growing, since we're working on various work streams right now. And so it's just a way for us to really gather and solidify that presence as we start the meetings. And I've noticed that even though we don't necessarily do that externally, just the presence that's there, we meet regularly with our clients. So I can speak, for example, with the Salinas work in California, we have weekly touch base with the lead project members of that. And I think honestly the weekly cadence of that has really solidified just the relationship, because it's now at a point where we're not just talking business, but we're just real with each other. We can be very real and honest of what's working, what's not working. We've pivoted that project a little bit, twice now almost actually, where we started working, as Elvis mentioned before, on theories of change, and then we wanted to involve more of the community via a conversation that came from some of the CBOs. And then again, now we're looking more into the data analytics. So I think all that being said is just really learning to fine tune our hearing, not just to each other, but to what the clients are really needing, because I think that right there opens up the door for deeper conversations.
Great.
I can jump in and talk a little bit about how we do that with partners. There are definitely several partners that we do those grounding sessions with, and that has been really useful to build a good foundation of trust and to get to know each other better along the way. And one thing I've watched Elvis do in facilitating is really trying to get a good read of the room, getting a sense for where people are, how people are feeling, getting a sense of reactions and where they are with how we're moving along with the project. And having those groundings can really help get a sense of how people are feeling, where they are, building trust, and making sure that we're moving the work forward in a way that works well for everyone.
Yeah, just to add to that, we internally we use we call it having real conversation. The R is for on a range of 1 to 10, how you're showing up today, and what's keeping you from being a 10. What are you excited about? The E. What are you anxious about? The A. And what are you looking forward to or learning? The L. So we start that, and the reason we do that is to appreciate the full person in showing up at meetings. We do that with a client. We're working with a small organization based in New York called She's the First. It's focused on girls empowerment. And we have a regular call. We help them with developing their strategy and setting out their work, their plans for the next 5 years. Each meeting begins with one of the founders of the organization and one of their lead people with that same grounding. And we've gotten the feedback that they appreciate that. We use it also with our Gates Foundation emergency client. And it makes a huge difference, both in terms of the quality of our lives and the quality of the relationship we build. So those are good ways in which we grow as a team, but also help or deepen our relationship with our client that produces better products at the end of the day. Someone, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna mention there's a question in the chat from
Yes,
Michelle.
yes.
I don't know that you are also just about to reference.
I see a bunch of questions. So the most recent one is, what's the acronym? It's called REAL. The range on 1 to 10, where you're showing up. The E in what are you excited about? The A is what are you anxious about? And the L is can be either what you're looking forward to or what you're learning. And I must credit my colleague Meg for adding to that, acronym and building it out. What have I picked up in new cuisines during lockdown? I am a cook. I cook for my family. Actually, I am big on making Caribbean food, but over the lockdown, I've learned to make a very mean biryani, lamb biryani. And also I've figured out like a few things on my skills with lentils. All things lentils, I've figured out. Stews, soups, you name it. Salads, I've figured that out. So that's a good one there for the lockdown. And then there was a question about work on the project for the Bellevue School District. So here's a very interesting project. No, we're running short in time, but I'll give you the brief story. It's funded by the King County. It was a levy that was passed to provide resources to deal with trauma, kids who have, and so trauma-informed intervention for kids and families. There is a new organization called Africans on the East Side. These are the African immigrant community that really wanted to deal with not just the trauma for kids, but also the challenges of integrating into American society. And they're in the Bellevue School District, but feeling excluded. So it's both trauma and exclusion. And so this new organization, Africans on the East Side, got a $300,000 grant onto this levy. And they got it because the previous fund, they didn't know what to do with it. And the organization asked them to take it on. And so now they need everything from how to start up a project, how to build partnerships, how to get the program built to target these kids and their families. So Sankofa, harnessing all of those program design, program management, coordination skills, was assigned the responsibility one, we're the fiduciary agent for this growing organization, and we're responsible for helping them to set up and launch this project, from everything from hiring the teams, helping with them with their budgeting, and providing technical oversight as they do this very important work.
We are closing out on time, but I can see that Peyton has her hand raised. And so perhaps this can be the last question before we wrap up today.
Okay.
Thanks, Shannon. Elvis, I'm curious to hear more about the work you're doing in the humanitarian sector. I know you mentioned some innovation work with emergency response. So I'd love to hear what one of those projects looks like.
Yep. So we are just broadly supporting Gates emergency response portfolio, which basically has its focus reducing, improving lives and reducing, saving lives and reducing suffering through its interventions. So we are doing two kinds of projects. They have two portfolios, one focusing on capacity building to localize humanitarian response, called localization, new concept in the humanitarian space, which means building the capacity for local humanitarian response agencies to take over some of what used to be done by UNHCR and those big international agencies that get all the resources but are not close to the problem, with a view to increasing response time, cultural contextualization of the response, and ultimately improving quality of the response. So we are helping the programs that they fund, the grants, to better track their results for improving capacity and building, shifting towards localization. We have part of that, one intervention, which is creating emergency operations centers in West Africa. We just are in the process of finishing up a case study of the Nigerian emergency operations centers, led by the Nigerian CDC, which has done a great job in responding to COVID-19. So part of what we're doing is capturing and synthesizing the lesson learned on this mechanism of emergency operations center, how it and why it played a role in improving the quality of the response to wide range of public health emergencies, but specifically in this scale, COVID-19. And Megan and I did design that case study, conducted the key informants reviews, document reviews, synthesized it, and happy to learn from yesterday that the report landed in the hands of Bill Gates himself, and he was quite happy with it. So we're glowing a little bit because our report ended up, and the feedback yesterday, quite timely, that Bill was quite happy with the report that we did and is going to use that to inform how he spends his next billion. So we're making a big difference on the world.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Wow, what a note to end on.
There you go.
It's really exciting. Congratulations to your team. So just wanted to say thank you so much to Elvis, Megan, and Meg for joining and sharing more about your work and the opportunities for students. And did want to just again point students back to the link that we shared for this position in Evans Jobs. I know that it's written quite broadly because, as was shared, there's a lot of flexibility in what people are looking for. And so I know both current students who might be interested in internship opportunity or students who are graduating and looking for something full-time are encouraged to take a look at it. We have been recording this session, so we're happy to send out the recording to everyone who joined. I can include again in that message the link to the job listing. And if there are any additional questions, I know that Megan and Meg shared their email addresses in the chat a little bit earlier. So I'm sure that students would be welcome to reach out with additional